The Clone Wars, a galactic conflict etched in history as a battle between good and evil, democracy and tyranny, heroes and villains. On one side, the Galactic Republic, with its noble Jedi defenders and a cloned army of genetically engineered soldiers. On the other, the Confederacy of Independent Systems, or as we call them, the Separatists, an alliance of planets, corporations, and idealists fighting for freedom from the Republic's corruption. We all know how the story ends. The Republic emerged victorious, but only as a shadow of its former self, paving the way for the rise of the Empire, the Separatists. Crushed, betrayed, and ultimately discarded, like scrap metal, by their own leader, Darth Sidious. And yes, I know Palpatine was pulling the strings on both sides. That's the twist, right? But here's the thing. Most people didn't know that. To the galaxy at large, this was a real war with real stakes, and by all accounts, the Separatists had everything they needed to win. Sheer quantity beats quality every time in war. History teaches us this over and over, from the droid army's endless ranks to the Separatists' economic and strategic advantages. The Republic was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outmatched. So why didn't the Separatists win? The answer lies within Palpatine. But if we strip away his interference, the picture becomes clear. The Separatists would have won the Clone Wars, and they would have done it decisively. So, buckle up as we dive into the reasons why the Separatists, for all their flaws, were on track to crush the Republic. From their logistical superiority to the Republic's glaring weaknesses. I'll show you how the galaxy's scrappy underdogs were poised to change the galaxy forever, if only they'd been allowed to. The Republic might have had shiny Coruscant skyscrapers, but the Separatists had the real economic power. Banking clans, corporate alliances, and trade federations. These were the financial titans of the galaxy, and they were all in the Separatist camp. Money talks, and in the Clone Wars, it was shouting victory in a Separatist accent. War is expensive, and the Republic was hemorrhaging credits faster than it could replace them. Meanwhile, the Separatists were running a galactic corporate empire. They had the factories, the trade routes, and the resources to keep their war machine running indefinitely. The Republic. They were borrowing credits left and right, digging themselves into a debt hole so deep they could see Mustafar from the bottom. Palpatine might have been the mastermind behind the war, but even he couldn't magically conjure credits. The Separatists didn't need magic. They had a well-oiled economic machine. Their ability to sustain a long-term war effort was unparalleled. And if the war had dragged on, the Republic would have run out of money before the Separatists ran out of droids. Wars aren't won by ideals, they're won by resources. And the Separatists had the economic edge. If it weren't for Palpatine's endgame, the Republic would have crumbled under the weight of its own financial incompetence. So, if the Separatists had all these advantages, why didn't they win? Simple. They were never meant to. The Clone Wars was not a war. They were a stage play, written and directed by Palpatine. The goal wasn't victory for the Separatists or the Republic. It was the destruction of both, paving the way for the Empire. Palpatine orchestrated every move, ensuring the war dragged on just long enough to weaken both sides. The Separatists had the tools to win, but their leadership, Grievous, Dooku, and the rest, was just as much under Palpatine's thumb as the Republic. In the end, the war was a game of chess, and the Separatists were pawns. But here's the kicker. If Palpatine hadn't been pulling the strings, the Separatists would have had every advantage. Without his interference, they could have outlasted the Republic, forced a peace deal, or even taken Coruscant itself. The tragedy of the Separatists is that they were doomed by their own creator. So, next time you think about the Clone Wars, remember, the Separatists could have won. They should have won. But in a galaxy ruled by the Sith, winning isn't about strategy or strength. It's about playing the game Palpatine's way. And in his game, no one really wins. Here's the thing about the Clone Wars. The Separatists controlled most of the Outer Rim. That's a lot of planets, a lot of resources, and a lot of places to hide. Fighting a war on your home turf gives you a strategic advantage that even the Jedi couldn't overcome. The Republic. They were the invading force, spreading themselves thin across a galaxy they barely understood. The Separatists also had hyperspace routes on lockdown, thanks to Count Dooku's strategic genius. The Separatists could strike wherever they wanted, and vanish before the Republic could muster a response. It's like playing chess against someone who can teleport their pieces. Good luck keeping up with that. And let's not forget the Republic's supply lines. Stretching resources across a galaxy is no easy task, especially when the enemy controls the majority of trade routes. The Separatists could disrupt Republic supply chains with a single blockade. Meanwhile, their droid armies were built locally, giving them a massive logistical edge. In the grand game of galactic warfare, the Separatists had the upper hand in strategy. They didn't need to conquer Coruscant, they just needed to bleed the Republic dry, one Outer Rim planet at a time. It's the galactic equivalent of death by 1,000 cuts. and the Separatists were more than happy to wield the blade. Let's talk about the Jedi. Sure, they're awesome in a duel, but leading a galactic army, that's not exactly their wheelhouse. The Jedi Council was so focused on their mystical mumbo-jumbo that they forgot to read a basic strategy manual. Trusting the Force is great when you're fighting one Sith Lord, but it's a terrible way to plan a war. The Jedi were also spread way too thin. With only a few thousand Jedi in the galaxy, they were forced to lead battalions of clones into battle after battle. And while they were busy swinging lightsabers on the front lines, the Separatists were playing the long game. Count Dooku, a former Jedi himself, knew how to exploit their weaknesses. He manipulated them like a master chess player, always 2 steps ahead. Worse, the Jedi's moral code held them back. They refused to embrace the brutal efficiency needed to win a war. The Separatists, on the other hand, had no such qualms. They were ruthless, pragmatic, and willing to do whatever it took to win. When it comes to war, nice guys finish last, and the Jedi were the nicest guys in the galaxy. By the time the Jedi realized they were outmatched, it was too late. They were fighting a losing battle against an enemy that understood the art of war far better than they did. If the Jedi were the Republic's ace in the hole, it's no wonder the Republic folded. Corruption ran so deep in the Senate that most of its members couldn't see daylight through the credits stacked in their pockets. The Republic was fighting a two-front war, one against the Separatists and one against its own incompetence. How do you lead a galactic war effort when the Senate spends more time debating trade taxes than funding the clone army? Spoiler alert, you don't. Meanwhile, Palpatine, the galaxy's ultimate micromanager, manipulated the Republic like a puppet show. Sure, he controlled both sides of the war, but let's not pretend the Republic had a chance without him pulling the strings. The Jedi Council. They were glorified advisors in funny robes, completely out of touch with galactic politics. When you have to rely on monks with lightsabers to fix your problems, you're already losing. Now, compare this to the Separatists. They weren't bogged down by a dysfunctional Senate. They had a streamlined council of leaders. Sure, those leaders included a talking spider and a greedy banking alien, but hey, at least they got stuff done. If efficiency is key to winning a war, the Separatists had the upper hand. Let's face it, the Republic was like an old battleship. Big, impressive, but leaking from every possible angle. The Separatists, they were the sleek, ruthless submarine and submarine-sink battleships. The Republic's fate was sealed the moment it tried to fight a war it wasn't equipped to handle. Let's address the metal elephant in the room, the droid army. Yes, battle droids are about as intimidating as a toaster with legs, but don't underestimate the power of sheer numbers. For every clone trooper, the Separatists could churn out 1,000 droids, and unlike clones, droids didn't need food, water, or inspirational pep talks from Jedi generals. The Separatists also had some heavy hitters, droids with their impenetrable shields, spider droids with their creepy legs, and those giant warships that could bombard a planet from orbit. If the Separatists had focused less on designing droids with the IQ of a toddler, they could have steamrolled the Republic in months. But even as they were, the droids were a logistical dream, cheap, efficient, and endlessly replaceable. Meanwhile, the Republic was stuck with clones. Sure, clones were more effective, but they were expensive to produce and train. And let's not forget, every clone lost in battle was a genetic brother, which came with its own moral and psychological baggage. Droids didn't cry over their fallen comrades. They just stepped over the scrap metal and kept shooting. The Separatists didn't need to win every battle. They just needed to outlast the Republic. With their factories churning out droids faster than the Republic could train clones, the numbers game was firmly in their favor. In the end, it's not about how smart your soldiers are, it's about how many you can throw at the problem. As we've explored, the Separatists weren't some ragtag group of rebels blindly throwing droids into battle. They were a well-funded, strategically minded alliance with the numbers, resources, and tactical advantages to bring the Republic to its knees. Their droid army, while often mocked for its simplicity, was a logistical juggernaut that no amount of Republic cloning could match. The Republic itself was a crumbling, corrupt institution, held together by bureaucracy and tradition, rather than strength or vision. But the Separatists were never fighting on a level playing field. Unbeknownst to all but a select few, their leader, Count Dooku, was nothing more than a pawn of Darth Sidious, the man orchestrating both sides of the conflict. The Clone Wars weren't a contest of ideals. They were a meticulously engineered chess game designed to weaken both factions and usher in the rise of the Empire. Their numbers, their strategy, and their willingness to embrace ruthless efficiency would have overwhelmed the Republic. Sheer quantity beats quality every time, and the Separatists had quantity in spades. Thanks so much for watching. I spend a good bit of time making sure each video is great. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps out and means a lot to me. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.